So the story begins, and we meet Max lay unconscious on a sharp rock for 3 days and 3 nights. As soon as he opened his eyes, he looked around and froze. Far out in the sea, his fellow sailors floated, as if sleeping soundly. But when he got closer, his soul trembled. They were all long dead. At that very moment, Max realized that he was the only one left alive in this terrible accident. His heart was heavy, but he still mustered up the courage to bury everyone's bodies on the shore. By evening, darkness spread all around, and the silence of forest and unknown dangers kept him from entering. He climbed a nearby large tree and sat there terrified all night. Only one thing was on his mind. He had to find a way to save himself by morning. The next morning, when the sun rose, he saw the large ship he had been traveling on in the distance. He was determined to go there and gather food, water, and survival supplies. After hours of hard work, he somehow reached the ship. He had just ascended into the cabin when suddenly he heard a dog's faint cry from a room. Alarmed, he picked up an axe and smashed the door. As the door opened, his beloved dog, Simba, stood there alive. The sight brought tears of joy to his eyes. Then, in another room, he found some food, some tools, and a large number of guns. He quickly brought everything he could gather to the deck before the ship sank. Then, by cutting wooden planks, he built a sturdy raft. He lowered Simba down and tied everything securely with ropes. The situation was so dire that he had to use the same rope to tie his trousers around his waist. His only thought was to somehow save his and Simba's lives. IT was heavy, but the strong waves of the sea made his work easy. He brought everything to shore without much effort. But as he counted the food and drinks, his heart sank. There was only enough rations for 1 meal left. This meant that he and Simba would have to eat very carefully and also find a way out quickly. Gathering some strength, Max took his rifle and headed into the jungle, hoping to find a path, a sign, or a way back home. He crossed a high waterfall, then a vast, deserted plain, and then, slowly walking, he reached the other side of the island. When he reached the other side, he was absolutely stunned. As far as the eye could see, there was no land, no people, no sign of life. Moreover, this place was a place where ships never passed. This meant that the hope of rescue was almost nil. So Max decided that if help ever arrived, he shouldn't miss it. He moved a small hideout closer to the sea and spent hours every day staring at the ocean with his binoculars. But days passed, weeks passed, and 6 months passed, and nothing changed. One day, Max and Simba were searching for shells on the rocks near the shore when Simba suddenly started barking loudly. At first, Max didn't pay attention, but as he picked up his water pot to drink, his eyes widened. A large ship was sailing in the distance. Without thinking, he took off running. He picked up the torch he had prepared in advance and ran with all his might toward a large fire he had built about 100 meters away. But it took time for the fire to grow as brightly as needed. The ship was small and too far to be seen. As the ship moved away, Max's anxiety and panic grew. He wanted to get the ship to pay attention to him somehow. He picked up his rifle and he fired several shots into the sea. But the sound of his bullets was instantly lost in the roar of the vast ocean. The ship continued moving forward without any reaction, as if Max did not exist. This was his last hope, and even that seemed shattered. In desperation and panic, Max took a crazy step. He jumped straight into the sea and began swimming with all his might. He repeatedly tried to move forward by waving his hands. But within a few minutes, he realized that he was unable to move from his place. The strong waves were preventing him from moving forward. Slowly, the ship shrank before his eyes. Then it became just a dot, and then it disappeared completely. Max was exhausted. There was no strength left in his body. His mind was blank, and all hope was shattered. The sea itself pushed him back toward shore. When he fell onto the sand, he was completely wet, exhausted, and broken. Simba came running to him. He was crying and wailing, as if he had understood everything. Hearing Simba's voice, Max's heart broke even more. He might have been able to bear a human's pain, but the pain of his dog was the only thing that tore his heart. That night, Max gazed silently at the sky. The stars were shining, but he saw no hope in them. He thought for a long time, and finally, one thing became clear. If no one was going to come to his rescue, he would have to make this place his home. The very next day, he threw himself into work. First, he found a safe place, then collected wood, and slowly began building a small shelter. He had few tools, but he had plenty of courage. Within a few days, he had built a structure, improving it a little each day. This routine continued for several months, and by the end of the year, he had built a beautiful, large, rustic house. Gradually, he began to realize that this island wasn't entirely bad. There were pineapples, sweet mangoes, wild animals, and best of all, natural hot springs. There was food, water, hunting, and most importantly, Simba was with him. Now his life had become a monotonous routine. Waking up in the morning to find food, repairing the house, or collecting wood from the forest during the day, and sitting on the seashore in the evening, gazing at the water stretching to the sky. Sometimes he would think that perhaps someday a ship would pass by again. But his life no longer relied on that hope, and he didn't even realize how 2 years had passed in a flash. Even though he was alone on this desolate island, he wasn't truly alone, because Simba was with him every breath, every step, every moment. Simba's presence was like the last remaining warmth of his life. He tried to keep himself busy in various ways, sometimes by carving his experiences on wood, sometimes by writing in an old diary, sometimes by playing a soft tune on the flute. Whenever the flute's sound wafted through the air, Simba would jump around lightly, wagging his tail, as if he, too, was searching for his own small happiness in this desolate world. But no matter how hard a person tries, loneliness cannot be completely escaped. Gradually, Max's days began to feel monotonous and dull. Every morning, the same shore, the same tree, the same forest, and at night, when everything fell silent, the empty space in his heart would scream the loudest. Many times, he would sit in a corner of his house and cry, remembering his wife. Her laughter, her gentleness, her companionship, all were now just memories. One day, while Max and Simba were taking a leisurely stroll on the beach, he suddenly noticed a deep mark in the sand. At first, he thought it might be his own footprint. But as he bent down and saw its shape, his heart stopped for a moment. It was a human mark, but so large that it seemed as if a giant, a ferocious warrior, or a monster had stepped on it. A cold shiver ran through his spine. He immediately tightened his grip on the rifle. His gait gradually became extremely cautious. Every bush, every rustle in the tree, every whisper was within his sight. Simba, too, had become strangely alert. He growled softly, as if sensing some invisible danger. As he ventured a little further into the forest, Max was startled. Several canoes were parked there, beautifully carved from sturdy wood, looking as if someone had just moored them ashore. And from nearby, strange sounds were coming. It wasn't like talking, it wasn't like singing, but something he'd heard for the first time in his life. At that very moment, he understood someone was on the island, and they weren't ordinary people at all. His heart was pounding. So, friends, if you like the story, please like and subscribe. Still, Max followed the sounds and landed behind a thick tree he hid behind a ledge and peeped. As soon as he saw the scene before him, all the blood in his body froze. A large group of tribals were performing a horrific sacrificial ritual. Drums were beating loudly. Fire was piercing the sky, and in the middle, some men, bound in ropes, were writhing in blood. Their screams shook Max to the core. He trembled and slid backwards to the ground. A fierce battle raged within him between fear and courage. He knew that if he were seen, he would likely meet the same fate as those men. But as soon as he looked at the eyes of a man bound in ropes, there was not fear in those eyes, but a plea for mercy, a cry for help. That sight broke something inside Max. Even 2 years of loneliness hadn't destroyed his humanity. For a few seconds, he fought his own heartbeat. Then he took a breath and made a decision. He wouldn't stand idly by and watch someone die, even if it meant losing his own life. Max picked up his rifle from behind a tree, took aim, and as soon as he found the right moment, he pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot echoed to the forest, and the entire ritual erupted in chaos. The drums stopped. The tribesmen began screaming, and there was chaos. In the chaos, a young man tied to a rope somehow managed to break free and escape. That one shot had not only opened the door to danger, but also saved a life. Running a short distance away, the young man came face to face with Max. Both of them paused for a moment. There was such tension in the air that it was impossible to understand what was about to happen next. Slowly, the tribesman approached Max without any anger. He lowered his weapon. Then, kneeling down, he placed Max's leg on his shoulder, as if silently saying, "You saved my life." But the next moment, the atmosphere changed completely. The tribal man suddenly grabbed Max's gun. Max's heart pounded. He feared this misunderstanding might cost them both their lives. But he quickly realized that this man didn't know how to use a gun. He held it like a piece of dry wood. If the trigger were accidentally pulled, anyone could be shot. Max immediately raised both his hands, as if saying, "Stay calm." It was clearly written on his face, "I'm not an enemy. I just want to be a friend." But the language barrier stood like a wall between them. The tribal man watched Max's every move with suspicion. His face reflected fear, confusion, and suspicion all at once. Instead of anger, Max chose humanity. He slowly opened his bag and took out some fruit and dry food. Then, stepping back a little, he placed the food on a rock and gestured, "This is for you to eat." The tribesman looked first at Max, then at the food, then back at Max. After a few seconds, he realized that this was not a threat, but help. He slowly moved toward the food. But then, deep inside the forest, there was a rustling of leaves, and 3 dangerous enemies emerged, tearing through the bushes. Just by looking at their faces, it was clear they wouldn't let them both live. Max didn't waste a second. He quickly snatched his rifle back and fired. The first enemy fell on the spot, and then something happened that Max hadn't even imagined. The tribesman, who hadn't even learned to hold a gun, moved forward like lightning. He struck with his weapon, and in an instant one enemy fell to ground. Now Max wasn't alone. He had a new companion. A companion he didn't understand, but who had decided to stand by him. After taking down the enemy, Max thought everything had calmed down, but what he saw the next moment shook him to his core. The tribe with whom Max had been fighting shoulder to shoulder just moments before suddenly leaned over the body of his dead comrade and began eating him. The sight was so horrifying that Max's blood ran cold. A con sound suddenly escaped his throat, and upon hearing it, the tribe, alarmed, fled. Only then did Max realize this man was not just a tribe, but a cannibal. Fear coursed through his veins. He immediately returned to his hideout and, for several days, did only one thing: security. He built a barricade of sharp sticks around his house, prepared numerous pits and rope traps, and loaded every rifle. He stayed awake all night, lighting a fire, fearing an attack. But, to his astonishment, for 6 months, no one enemy didn't return. The more the silence grew, the more restless Max became. Finally, he thought, if danger isn't coming to me, then perhaps I'll have to go to it. He took his rifle and Simba and set out into the jungle, carefully considering each step. But suddenly, the ground caved in beneath him, and he was hanging upside down from a tree, entangled in the ropes. The rifle had fallen, and his body was unable to move at all. Simba barked in panic. He remained there for a moment, then ran into the jungle, perhaps to find help or to save himself. A while later, the same tribesman emerged from the bushes. But this time, there was no hostility in his eyes, only a strange curiosity. He slowly picked up Max's fallen rifle and stared at it as if it were something from another world. Meanwhile, Max hung upside down, his mind abuzz with one question: will this moment save me or destroy me? The tribe sat down on the ground and stared intently at the rifle, as if trying to understand the meaning of this powerful object. Seizing the opportunity, Max bit his waist with clenched teeth. He freed himself from the ropes and, as he fell, fired a warning shot. The bullet ricocheted off a nearby tree, and Max ran and picked up his rifle. The tribe was frightened, but there was also surprise in his eyes, as if he was understanding for the first time how dangerous this weapon was. Max wanted him to understand this. A rifle was not just a thing, it was an instrument of death. So, Max fired a straight shot into the tree, and the bark flew up and scattered all around. The tribe was stunned by this, but he didn't give up. He picked up a piece of wood from the ground swung it in the air, and threw it sharply at the sharp point of a nearby tree. His aim was so precise, it felt like the attack of a skilled hunter. The tribe proudly pointed at his target, as if to say, "Your rifle is right, but I'm not that weak either." Max calmed down a bit after seeing this. This man was wild, but not stupid. He had sense, and perhaps even a bit of a human heart. Gradually, Max decided to take him home. It was nighttime. Max gave him food, fruit, meat, and water. The tribe ate with confidence, and for the first time in months, Max felt he wasn't truly alone, but the fear still lingered. So at night, he chained him lightly so he wouldn't escape or cause any harm. But the next morning, something strange happened. The tribe, without making a sound, unchained him and went straight to Max's room. Hearing the sound, Max woke up startled. For a moment, he thought some danger had entered his home, but what he saw in front of him froze. The same tribesman he had tied up out of fear the previous night was now standing with a completely calm face, holding food for him. In that moment, Max's heart truly melted. He realized he had misjudged this man. Perhaps he had made a grave mistake by doubting him. Max unchained him without delay, smiled for the first time, and held his hand. He named him Philip. This name became the beginning of a friendship between them. After this, Max resolved to teach Philip his language. Initially, he thought this task would take months or years. But Philip was no ordinary person. He was born intelligent. In just 6 months, he was able to communicate with Max with ease through basic conversations. He not only spoke but also understood, and this wasn't his only strength. Philip was also very hardworking. He would improve the house with Max, go hunting, work in the fields, and be a companion in every daily activity. Max was perhaps regaining as much as he had lost. One evening, the two were sitting by the fire. Max was telling Philip a Bible story. He wanted Philip to feel God like he did. But Philip said in a calm voice, "Our tribe's beliefs are different. We believe in a bird god. I believe in what I can see. Your God lives in spirits, and I can see the soul of everything. So, our beliefs aren't different. They just lead to the same destination through different paths." Hearing this, Max realized for the first time that Philip wasn't savage, but a man with a deep soul. When Philip declared that he didn't like Max's God, the atmosphere between them suddenly became tense, and an argument broke out. Max picked up a Bible and showed him that God resided in it. But Philip flipped through the pages and said he found nothing inside. This enraged Max, who called him a savage. Heartbroken by the insult, Philip immediately left home. After this, the two became strangers, even though they lived on the same island. Whenever they met on the road, they would look away. Philip would fish with a spear, and Max would fish for them with a hook. Life took different paths. But as time passed, regret filled Max. He realized that changing someone wasn't respect. True respect lies in accepting each other's different thoughts and beliefs. After several days of contemplation, Max gathered courage and went to find Philip. When he found him sitting alone, he approached him and said in a low, sincere voice, he sincerely apologizes for what he said in anger. From now on, they will not interfere with each other's trust and will maintain their friendship with respect. Then he asks, "Will you forgive me, Philip?" After this incident, Max and Philip became friends again, and their relationship grew even stronger. In their free time, they would play and race crabs on the beach like older boys, wishing their peaceful lives could remain like this forever. But one day, Philip told Max that he had broken his tribe's rules. That's why he was sent to this island for sacrifice. And because Max had saved his life, the tribe would surely come back to perform another sacrificial ritual. Hearing this, the two decided to plant a large number of explosives at the volcano's old firing site in advance, so that when the tribe returned, they would be cut off once and for all. A whole month passed in devising this plan. Then one day, when a rumbling sound came from the volcanic cave, Max and Philip took torches and hid behind trees. They lit the fuse as soon as they got the chance. Sparks spread rapidly, and eager Simba ran alongside them, heading towards a cave. The next moment, there was a loud explosion, and before Max's eyes, his 10-year-old companion, Simba, vanished in the flames. It was impossible for him to believe it. Heartbroken, he buried Simba in his courtyard and wept and prayed for him. Meanwhile, Philip warned that if the tribe found out he was still alive, they would never abandon him. Max responded by saying they could build a raft and sail to England. Hearing this, Philip became enraged and declared that their tribe was often attacked by white settlers, captured and enslaved. Then suddenly Philip began to wonder if Max also considered him a slave, and the more Max denied it, the angrier Philip became. Because of this misunderstanding, Max lost his best friend again. Left alone, he had only one option: to build a raft to escape the island. To do so, he had to single-handedly chop down giant, centuries-old trees with an axe. With each blow, he realized he was completely alone on the island. He needed to leave the island before a storm hit, and Max had less than a month left. So he worked tirelessly day and night, in the wind and rain. Through his tireless efforts, the raft slowly began to take shape. One day, as he was tying ropes, Philip suddenly came up behind him and said loudly, "I haven't slept yet. I'm ready to go to my friend." Then, emotionally, he said that Max had saved his life, and now he wanted life to take Max to safety. With that, he gave Max a garland he had made with his own hands, explaining that he had returned this time to help him. This made them friends again. But then a terrible storm struck, and they were forced to leave their goats outside and hide in a flimsy house, waiting for the storm to pass. Neither of them imagined that even though they had tied the raft with strong ropes, the force of nature proved so powerful that the entire raft would be swept away. After somehow surviving the long night, when they emerged in the morning, the entire island was littered with broken branches, uprooted roots, and scattered wood, as if the storm had swallowed all their hard work and hopes in one fell swoop. Max and Philip had no time to panic, as the full moon was fast approaching, meaning the tribesmen could arrive on the island at any moment. Now, their victory depended solely on their intelligence and ammunition. The two immediately began setting various traps. They built a machine using a windmill mechanism that could fire bullets automatically. They assembled broken mirrors to create a distraction device and set every path so that the tribesmen would be trapped as soon as they stepped inside. Finally, the full moon night arrived, when everything was at stake. Maxie shaved his beard and disguised himself as a tribal man. Before the battle began, both prayed to their respective gods, as this was truly a do-or-die battle. Max then played his flute to draw the tribal's attention to the traps, and the plan seemed to be working perfectly as they began to follow the sounds. But when they passed Simba's grave, they broke the wall. This ignited a wave of anger within Max. He momentarily cut the rope, triggering a hidden mechanism that killed several tribals on the spot. The remaining ones were turned away by the glare of the broken mirrors and fell straight into the large trap. Now victory was truly near. The entire group of tribals was wiped out. But just as Max and Philip thought it was all over, the last tribal emerging from the bushes suddenly shot an arrow, striking Max squarely in the chest. Without thinking twice, Philip threw his axe and killed the enemy. Then he immediately ran into the forest, found herbs, ground them, and applied them to Max's wound. But even after 3 days, the wound had become more infected instead of healing. It became clear that if Max wasn't treated quickly, he wouldn't survive more than 2 days. So Philip, risking his own life, decided to take Max to his tribe for treatment, because the real medicine was there. But as soon as they reached the tribe's gate, the tribesmen, armed with bows and arrows, surrounded them, thinking Max was a white man who had enslaved them. Still, there was a rule that killing the sick was a sin. So the doctor cleaned Max's wound and began treatment. But Philip was told that as soon as Max recovered, he would have to fight a deadly duel with Philip in the arena, and only the one who survived would be allowed to leave. 2 days later, according to the same rules, Max and Philip were forced to stand face-to-face in the arena. Until yesterday, they had been best friends, and now they were afraid to hurt each other. But the rules were so cruel that if they didn't fight, both would be killed. The fight began unavoidably. Finally, Max fell to ground. His dagger fell away, and he spread his arms and closed his eyes. He wanted his friend to kill him immediately, but when Philip leaned over him, his hand stopped. He couldn't strike. Suddenly, a sharp gunshot rang out, and Philip fell into Max's arms. The biggest part of Max's heart broke at that moment when he learned that the white men had come to attack the tribe again and had mistakenly shot Philip. Thus, he was trapped on the island for 15 years. Max finally arrived at the hospital with the white men's ship and hugged his wife. But even today, when he sits by the fire, he remembers his friend with whom he spent those years of life, struggle, courage, and loyalty. Years that will forever remain alive in his soul. We hope you enjoyed the story.